Welcome back, guys. So, in this episode, we are going to discuss how we should set up our project whenever we start any new project. How do we set up and how do we do the folder structure and everything? Where should we keep our components, services, models, and everything, right? So that we are going to discuss. This is the second video related to that. The first video was very basic, but in this video, we will be diving more deep into that. Okay. Now, so just uh, first we will discuss the overall structure. So if we say when this is with the project, which is not with the lazy loading, right? Again, with the lazy loading, just the module will be extra part, but basic themes will be same. So let's say on the top one, we will have core folder, shared folder, and the pages folder. So first core folder, right? So in core folder, we can have, so core folder will be responsible to hold services, just the code, which is just going to have the .ts file, means just the right, just the coding part. So just to see, services will be the first folder, right? In that services, you can create a master service file, right? So master service means this will be specific to API call. Let's say in API call, what just the 4 API call we normally do, right? So you can create a generic service over there where you will have for get, post, put, and delete API call, right? Then your respective service means from all the service, you will call the function from this master service. So only one place, that is master service, you have to implement HTTP client, right? So again, we will see the difference, like why it is necessary. Because if you have, let's say, if you have 10 to 15 service, in all the 10 to 15 service, you need to import that HTTP client, right? But if you have a common service for API call, so there only one import will be there. So you are just reducing your code, right? So this is about service folder. Then models, right? When we talk about models, we have classes and interface. So two options we have. Either we can create classes or we can create interface. So for that, we have two folder. Constant. This is also very important, right? So whenever we say constant, a data which is not going to change and which is going to be useful over multiple scenarios, right? So that kind of data we are going to store in the constant. So again, in the constant, you can differentiate, like you can create one API constant file, image URL, if your application is going to fetch data from particular image URL, then cloud specific URL, right? If we say Amazon, we get S3 bucket, and Azure, we have block, right? So like that, you can store cloud specific URL into constant. Then we have guard. So when we talk about guard, we normally create two guards: can activate, which will check like route, do we have to allow the route to load or not, and then can deactivate. That will be used when, let's say, if we have a form and if we are trying to navigate, we get the pop-up like, do you want to save unsaved changes or not? Like that, we can implement. Then resolver is also kind of a guard, but it has a separate value or separate importance. So whenever any component is getting loaded, let's say you have a scenario, before loading component, you need to make an API call and get the data ready. So that kind of scenario you can handle in a resolver. Okay. Interceptor, you already know, like whenever we make the API call, before API call going from our Angular system, finally, if we have interceptor loaded, interceptor implemented, it will go to the interceptor. From there, it will make the API call. And same like that, whenever we get the response back, first it will come to the interceptor, then it will pass on to the service and then component. So interceptor will sit between your application and the server. Then util file are just a specific file where you will keep your reusable functions. Let's say date formatting, form validation, array operations, right? So many scenarios can be there. So normally we call this as a util. Then we have a shared folder. So in shared folder, we will have just 3 folders. First will be reusable component. We normally call it as a widgets. So component which won't have any routes, and these components are going to be used over multiple components, right? Then directive, if we are creating our custom directive, we will be keeping it over here. Pipes, right? Whatever the pipes we are going to create, our custom pipe, that we will store here. Pages folder, that is where our actual HTML components will be there, where we will be writing our, let's say, user component, admin component, employee component, create employee, show list employee, whatever the component. And this component will have routes, right? Just like reusable component, we normally don't create routes of this. But For in the components which we will be creating in pages, we will have routes. Then coming back to asset folder, right? So in asset folder also we can create some folder structure. So images folder will be responsible to hold all the images. I18, this is if your application is going to support multiple language, right? Hindi, English, German, French, like that your application is going to change. So that I18 folder, particular language.json file will be in the I18 folder. Static, let's say some particular dropdown is there, and that dropdown data is going to be, let's say 10 to 15 records data is going to be in the dropdown. But rather than creating that 10 to 15 record array into that particular component, you can store that kind of data into statics, right? So that data is not going to change, but you need to keep it somewhere. Either you can do that thing in the constant, or you can use the static folder. Then icons, if you are going to use certain icons that are not in the font awesome or any material library or anywhere you are using some specific icon, that you can put it in the icon folder. So this is the overall folder structure what we have discussed. Let's try to implement the same. So coming, I will start from the core folder. So in SRC, in app folder, first folder we have to create is core. So core, first I will create all the specific parent folder. After that, shared. Then we will have pages, right? Now, starting with core folder, first folder we are going to need is services. Again, I will create the parent level folder first, services, or let's make it as a service only. Then model, then constant. What else we have discussed? Guard, resolver, and interceptor. So guards, interceptors, because we normally have two interceptor. First, like for ongoing request, and second interceptor to process the incoming response. Interceptor is done. Then utils. So utils folder, right? So parent folder created in inside the core folder. First, we will implement the constant. Let's say inside that we are first API call like API constant, right? So API constant .ts, right? Now we have to create a constant file. So export const API constant, right? So here you are going to store all your API endpoints, whatnot you can do, right? So just for an example, let's say we have user. So you can say user colon, and inside that create right. Let's say user slash create new user. This is kind of a API endpoint you have. So like that, you are going to store all your API endpoints over here. Actual API will be storing into the environment folder, but the method name, right? From that method name, you are going to store here. So just like create get all users colon, then user slash get all users, like that, whatever your API endpoint is. So this is for user. Let's say we have employee. So employee object get all employee colon. Then API endpoint will be obviously employee, then get all employee. Like that, you can create so many API endpoints, right? So this is the first example of constant we have done. Then guard, right? So in guard, just I have discussed, like we can create two types of guard. That first one is the can activate, and second is the can deactivate. So right click, open in integrated terminal. So to create the guard, we have a command Angular CLI. So ng generate guard. Okay, let's enter. So whenever we write the command to create a guard, right? So as you may have know, like what type of guard, what name you will to give. Okay, so I forgot the name. So it has asked, let me just again write ng generate guard, let's say auth guard, right? So auth guard will be like can activate, we will implement. So enter. So now it will ask like which type of guard you need to implement. So let's see. So these are the various guard we are going to have. Can activate, can deactivate, can activate child. So first just can activate we are going to use. So just press enter. So this will create a can activate guard, right? So first it was a normal service like base, but now it is an arrow function, right? So here you can write the logic like if after login, if you are storing data into local storage or session storage or cookie, you can check that code over here, like if data is present or not. If yes, return true. Otherwise, you can redirect to your login page, or you can show some message also, whatever things you need to do. So this is can activate. Just like that, right click. Okay, terminal is already open. We need to create another guard, that is ng generate deactivate. Okay, so this is the second guard I'm creating, which will be called when route is getting changed. Before that, I need to check anything, right? So that is can deactivate. So this deactivate guard will we normally use. Let's say you have a user registration form. Okay, on the page load, if user has typed, let's say you have 7 to 8 field, but user has added information into 3 or 4 field, and if he's trying to navigate, right, either he did that intentionally or he did that by mistake, right, on the back button or something. So before navigating, we can check, we can ask user, are you sure want to go away, or do you want to fill? That kind of functionality we can do it over here. That again logic will be like, we can, whenever user types into any field, we make that form dirty, and if form is dirty, we show the deactivate guard, right? So that kind of functionality we normally implement in the deactivate guard. So these two guards are done. API constant is done. Then we have interceptor. So now let's create interceptor. So as I told you, like two interceptor we will create. First is for the outgoing request, then second interceptor to process the incoming data, right? So ng generate let's say first interceptor, let's say uh, after login, if we are getting any token, right? And our APIs are token based. If you don't send the token, you are not going to get the data. So we store that token into session or local store or the cookie. So whenever you make an API call, that token need to be inserted into your header, API header, right? API call header. So for that, you can implement a token interceptor. So let's say token, enter. Right? No, okay. I means it has understood interceptor. So let me write full. So you can see if I say just it will create interface. So let me just delete this. Right. Now I have written complete thing, that is interceptor and then my interceptor name. So let's try now. Now it should create an interceptor. Let's check it. Yeah. So now you can see it has created interceptor. So this is a normal interceptor you get whenever you create an interceptor using command. Now, let's say you have the login token in your session storage or local storage. So you need to, whatever the request is performed, after that you need to insert headers into it. So I have that code ready. So that will be, you just need to create an headers like this. right? Whatever the content and thing, token, and anything, whatever the types you need to send. So just like this content, then bearer token, whatever you need to send. And here, instead of this value, you can read local storage data and put over here local storage dot get item. And if you have stored data into token variable, so you can get like that. What it is saying. Okay, right? So just like this, you can create the data and you can pass on to it. Okay, so this is also token. So you have created headers. After that, you need to modify the existing request, whatever you have got. So we create a new request by cloning it. So request, whatever the request we have got, it is over here. And with along with the request, we have created the new request, but inserting the headers also. Then this newly request, we will pass it over here to handle. From here, next dot handle, actual our API call will be made, right? So this is token interceptor. One more interceptor we are going to need, that will be once the API response comes back, right? So ng generate error. So that is nothing but error interceptor or response handler or something. Name can be anything, but it is going to handle once we get the data from the data back from the API. Enter. Now here you can see in the token interceptor, we have modified the request before sending it to the API. Now in error interceptor, we are going to modify the response, whatever we have got, right? So for that, this is the call. Let me just format it. HTTP response. Why do we saying instead of do, why it is saying request dot handle? Do, what is do? Map also it is not suggesting. Let's see what else we have. Okay, pipe also we can use. But again, things will get changed. Okay, but just to understand, you can just Google what thing you need to do over here. Currently, I don't have it ready with me, right? So whatever the response you get, that response you can modify. Like if we have error, let's say 4001, 401, 200, some error you need to show. So that you can handle it over here. Rather than doing all that code in all the services and all the API call subscribe, you can do that in a single place like this. So this is nothing but error interceptors. Let me just comment, otherwise it will throw the error. That's it. Okay, let it be. Right? So this is error interceptor. So two interceptor we have created. Token interceptor to process the outgoing request and error interceptor to process the incoming data. After interceptor, we have model. Inside model, we can create either classes or interfaces. Right? So classes or interfaces. Class we can create like, let's say you have a user class. So user.ts, and inside that export class user, and inside that user is your object. Let's say you have username as a field, colon data type string, then password, again data type string, name string, whatever things you have, right? So that properties you can create. Then this is a class, so it can have a constructor. We just need to initialize all these fields. So this dot name is equal to empty. Just like that, you can do, right? Username is equal to empty. But let's say some things are optional over here. So you can add question mark over here. So this password becomes now optional field. So you don't need to initialize it, right? So this is also you can do. So this is class. Just like that, we can create interface. So consider user as an user only. So I user. So whenever you create an interface, now try to create the file name with I. Let's say it will denote interface. Okay. So I user .ts. Now export. Instead of class, now you need to write interface. I user. Right. So now here you can create the property just like the class. So I will just copy paste this, paste it over here. Right. So it's your requirement or your project structure. Whenever you work for any company, someone will force you to create classes, someone will force you to create interface. So just like that, you need to manage. So model folder is done. Then we have services. So in services, we can create, again, we can create folders or key. We can create all the services in the parent service folder also. So first I'm creating master, right? Then let's say you should create folders just to create a separate hierarchy, right? So let's say I have an employee module is going to be there. So I will create employee. All the services related to employee, I will create it over here inside this folder. So let's say, let's create a service, ng generate service, let's say employee bash. Let's say we have so many API calls are going to be there for employee dashboard. So we can create a service for that. Employee dashboard service I have created. Just like that, let's say you have basic CRUD also, basic CRUD API is also going to be there, right? So for that also you can create, just name it with employee, right? So just like that, employee folder is there, user folder. So all whatever the major module you think you have in your application, just like that you can create services, right? But one master service you can create that in that you will just keep your API call for API call get post put delete. So ng generate master sorry, ng generate service and it will be master. So in the master service you will only store the, you will only create 4 API call functions, that will be get, post, put, delete, and from these services you will call the function from here. So let's say in employee service I will create a private HTTP colon HTTP client, right? And here I will create get, right? I will have parameter like URL string. I'm going to return the data of type observable. So observable, right? And here I will simply return this dot HTTP dot get. Whatever the URL I get, that I need to pass it over here. So just like get, I will create post, put, delete API call, right? But now this service I will integrate in the employee, whatever the services I have, I need to integrate over there. Master, master. Now the benefit of this, you are creating object of HTTP client only once in your whole application because you have created one service for that. Otherwise, you will be creating HTTP client in all the services. So that will minimize your code, right? So that's how we do it normally. So services are done. After that util folder, I have just told you, like you can create a simple .ts file and you can keep all your code over there, right? So core folder is done. Then we have pages. So let's say in the pages folder, again, if we divide our project into separate modules, so let's say employee is a module. All the component related to employee, we will put it over here. Then let's say we have, after employee, what we have, let's say user. We can create all our component related to user over here, right? Just like that, just to separate, you can create folders over here, right? After that shared. Okay, one more thing I needed to inform you. So constant we have created, right? So now this constant, we have to use it in the service. So employee, just an example I'm taking. get all employee. Let's say API call function we are going to create, right? So we are going to make the API call. So this dot master dot get, but we need to pass the API endpoint. Now, to pass the API endpoint also, one more thing, constant is done, but in constant, what we have stored from user and the actual method name. But we need the API endpoint, like from HTTPS. So that we can store in the environment folder. We have to create the environment folder also, right? So you need to create the environment folder so that you can create over the, we have a command to that, new terminal ng generate. Let me just, yeah, ng generate environment. This is the command to create an environment folder. Enter. So from Angular 15, we don't get the environment folder already created. Before that, we used to get it. But now if you have to create the environment folder, you have to do like this. Okay. So you can see environment folder is there. Let's say in environment folder, I will create API endpoint. So here API, let's say HTTPS colon, let's see the JSON placeholder API. So this is going to be my actual API. After that, we get so many things, right? So this is my actual API endpoint. Right. So now this environment folder I will implement. I will, what we can say, import in the particular service. So this dot environments dot API, right? So in environment, we have API up till now, actual. But after that, we need actual URL also. Let's say if we have in JSON placeholder, we have users. So you can see user is my actual URL. So that we will get it from our constant user. For get all user, we just have this, right? So up till that, we have got the API endpoint. Then we have to get the actual URL, that is get from here. So API constant, we will need the import for that. In API constant, we have object dot user dot get all user. So whatever the value we have stored over here, that we will get it over here. So this is the URL we have formed. Plus means we are just concatenating both, right? So this is how your API call should look like. Then you can call this API, call this particular method from any component, right? So again, so pages folder was done. Now in shared folder, just three things will be there. So reusable component that I am calling as widgets. Then we will have directives, like your custom directives, what for validation, tooltip, whatever you can create. Then you have pipes folder, right? So these three folders will be there. In directive, you will create all your directive. In pipes, you will create all your custom pipe, and widgets, you will be creating reusable components that are going to be used in all the pages, right? So this is how you should create your project structure. Again, we can go in many deep. If we have lazy loading, then we will have to export some functions or not. Okay, one more thing, interceptor we have created, but in app module, we need to add that over here also. So the code for it is like this. So in provider section, we have to add that. Our open interceptor was there. And this we have to get from the Angular common HTTP. So we had two interceptors. So two interceptor we need to add like that. Okay. So this is how you should plan your project architecture, right? If you work on any enterprise level action, but the basic things will be like this only. Whatever project you can see, basic things will be like this. Some extra things will be there, like for mocking and everything, but basic things will be this only, right? So that's it with the current video. Again, I will be coming up with some more ideas. If you have some suggestions, please follow me on the LinkedIn and you can suggest me that, right? That's it. Thank you.